A couple of weeks ago, I put out a video covering the basics of how to start in a team race. It looked at positioning, it looked about where you want to be before the start, and it looked at how you could optimize being in the right area to make it as easy as possible to be in the right place on the line with your team and get a winning combination as soon as possible. This week, we're going to be looking at some pre-start maneuvers, and we're specifically going to be looking at when to lead and when to follow and how to do both of them. Whereas last time was very theory heavy about which regions, which zones you want to be in, this week is going to be much more practical about how to actually push your opponent in towards the line, hold your opponent back, and end up where you want to be in that final minute of the start. Now, for those who don't know, leading and following, or tailing as it's sometimes called, refers to whether you're ahead or behind another opponent boat in the last minute of the start. The front boat is known as the leader or is leading, and the second boat is following. And what this means is that this is going to dictate the dynamic coming in towards the start. The boat in front often wants to slow down the boat behind so that they have more time and more space to accelerate in towards the line. And the boat behind wants to push the boat in front of them towards the line so that they're early and so that yellow can be in the right place to get their best start. This final minute is going to determine who's in control of the other boat and who's going to be in a better position off the line, and it's the most crucial part of the start. And it's really important that we can use all of our boat handling skills to make sure that we're in the right place and be able to either push them over the line, hold them back from the line, or start in a place which is going to be in poor wind for them or at the non-biased end. There are lots of variables that go into this, so we're going to be looking at when it's best to lead, when it's easier to follow, and what kind of boat handling skills you're going to need to be able to accomplish either one effectively. So if we're going to talk about leading and following, we first of all need to establish when it's better to lead and when it's better to follow. Again, this refers specifically to as we're coming in on our final approach to the start line in the final minute of the start. So it's going to be really critical to get in the right place so that we can be fast off the line and get into a winning combination. Whether we want to lead or follow is going to be highly dictated about where we're starting on the line, and you can learn more about this in my previous video. Now, some boats will be aiming to start at the boat end of the line, some boats will be aiming to start at the pin end of the line, some might be aiming for the middle. And this means that we're going to need different things depending on that. For instance, if you're starting at the pin end of the line, you're far more likely to want to lead in. And that's because it's really hard for a boat who gets underneath you to push you up that high and for you then to get a bad start. If a boat does go beneath you, they risk being below their lay line, so they can't make the pin. They're going to be in your bad air, and even if they do luff you up a bit, off the line, you're often going to be able to lock them. You might be ahead of them, holding them out. It's not really a great position to use, so it carries a lot more risk. Whereas, if you're at the boat end and you're tailing, following, then that's going to give you lots of opportunities to do things like hook your opponent. Even with a small overlap, you can force them above the committee boat where they're going to get a really bad start. It's going to give you the opportunity to hold back and stop them from tacking out if they're too early. And it's going to give you lots more options. In the middle, it's much more balanced. Whether you lead or follow is also highly dictated by what the bias on the line is. For instance, if the line is very pin bias, so the pin is much closer to the wind, then it's going to be much more advantageous to lead. And that's because it's really hard to get below someone and luff them when you're going to be in lots of bad air, especially if you're all the way back at the boat end and you've got other pairs out in front of you who are going to give you even more bad wind. And also because it's going to be hard enough to make the line anyway without dropping loads of height. And so it can be really hard to get down low enough and establish a big enough overlap to actually be able to luff your opponent over the line. Because in order to get in any sort of controlling position, you're going to need to get so far forwards on them on an almost close-hauled course. Oppositely, if it's a very boat bias line, then this is going to give you way more ability to follow. Because you can swoop down very low and luff hard, going really high. You can push people way above the committee boat. Even if you're starting at the pin, if your opponent is too early and you're able to go below them, then you can luff really hard. You can get right down on this low lay line and it can be a much more controlling position. The final factor is how strong the wind is. So if there's not very much wind, then it's going to be more advantageous to lead, because it's going to take a lot of momentum for another boat to get underneath you. If they try and push through your dirty air, they're going to slow down a lot. It's going to be really hard for them to get far enough forwards to be in any sort of controlling position where they can either luff you or attack you, and instead they're just going to end up in your bad air. They're going to stall out, and they're probably going to get a bad start. So if it's light, you generally want to be leading. On the opposite hand, if it's strong, then you're going to want to more likely be following. So if you're following in the strong, then you've still got lots of opportunity, lots of momentum to sweep in quickly, get underneath someone. It's very easy to very quickly make a threat to someone. Even if you're behind them, you can have lots of momentum, you can come in hard, come in fast, luff them hard, and you're going to be able to re-accelerate quite quickly. It's also going to mean that the leading boat has less opportunity to maneuver their way out of it, because often boat handling in strong winds can be much more difficult, and especially in a team racing boat, which are generally selected for their ability to roll and float through maneuvers, the light winds can be very advantageous, whereas strong winds can be a position where these boats are very vulnerable to big stall outs if someone attacks them hard. Now, you may be affected by more than one of these conditions. So you might be a boat starter in light winds on a pin bias line, and it's going to be a judgment call about which factors are the most important on the day. Maybe the location's shifty, in which case you might not want to let an opponent boat gamble on getting a good shift to luff you high. Maybe your teammates are doing a certain strategy and it might be more advantageous to stick together. There are lots of reasons why you might want to lead or follow in a given situation, and it's going to take a bit of a judgment call and lots of practice to be able to work out exactly when you need to lead and exactly when you need to follow. And even if you know which one you want to do, you're going to often end up doing the opposite, because your opponent is also going to want to do the same thing as you if they've analysed the situation in the same way. This means that we need to get really good at both leading and following, and being able to get ourselves into a leading or following position depending on what we want. As I said in the last video, often between 2 minutes and 1 minute to go, boats are going to be leading away from the start line. They're going to be sailing away, and this is going to be a key time to be able to gain control of your opponent and get into the leading or following position that you want to be in. Now, if two boats are heading away from the line, then generally the boat ahead has more control about when they turn around, and the boat behind has more control about who leads and who follows. This is because the boat ahead can jibe whenever they want to, and when they jibe, the other boat has to make a decision. They've got a dilemma. Do they jibe ahead of the boat in front of them, in which case they'll be leading, or do they go behind the boat in front of them, which means they'll be following? So as you can see, the blue boat got to choose when they turn around, and the yellow boat got to choose whether they led or followed. So what we're looking for as both of these boats is to be able to make both of these decisions ourselves as we're sailing away from the start line. And the way we do this for both boats is that we get an overlap. And this can be pretty tricky to do. So sometimes it's better to just compromise on the fact that you're only going to get to make one of those choices and see if you can make the best of it with what you have. The way you get to make both of those decisions is if your opponent is overlapped on the wrong side of you. So for instance, if yellow gets overlapped on blue here, then blue can luff them, and they can choose both now when they jibe, and they're also getting to choose to be leading. Because if yellow wants to lead, they're going to have to tack round. The jibe's going to probably be quicker than the tack, and yellow's going to be ahead. Or if yellow does decide to tack round from this position and blue really wants to follow, then they can just tack round too, which means that they're going to be in a following position. So blue has control over both variables here. Similarly, if yellow gets far enough forward that they can establish a leeward overlap on blue, then yellow is now in the position where they can choose both when they jibe to go in which case they'll be leading, or if blue decides to tack out, then again, yellow can choose to follow them. This means that as boats sail away from the line, they'll often be vying for control in some sort of way, and there'll often be other teammates in the mix who may complicate things further. This means that we need to think about where we are and what our plan is for approaching the line, what our plan might be with our teammates, whether we're going to let them always be ahead of us, whether we're flexible about where our starting positions are, and we're going to need to be really clear about when we turn around and whether we want to lead or follow. In general, the boat ahead is going to be looking to jibe a little bit earlier than they'd want to, because this is going to put the other boat that's following them in a position where they have to choose between leading in and being quite early, in which case they're going to be under pressure from blue to really get towards the line, or if blue jibes to take the lead, they're then going to have to jibe behind them, and now blue's got the pressure on them to slow them down and make sure they get to the line with the lead. So there's ways to subtly nudge your opponent into doing the thing that you want, but sometimes they're just going to get to make the decision. Given the fact that the leading boat is often going to be putting pressure on to turn around sooner than either they or the opponent would like, it's normally the case that you're going to be slowing time, trying to kill time as you approach the line. One boat's behind, pushing towards the line, one boat's ahead, trying to slow the race down. And this is where we get into that classic leading-following situation, which is going to lead to both boats doing a bit of fishtailing, trying to get control of the other, to hold them up, slow them down until they get to choose when to go and to push in towards the line at that moment. So what this is going to look like is that a boat behind is going to use their momentum normally to try and swoop in underneath the boat that's ahead and luff them, thereby giving the boat behind the lead and the ability to choose when to bear away and head towards the line, which is going to let them get the start that they want, and they'll be on time in a controlling position as they head towards the line. So that will be generally what that boat behind is aiming for. The boat in front doesn't want to allow this, so as the boat behind goes to go underneath them, they'll also bear away too, accelerating with them. And now they're pushing down towards their lay line, where they need to head up and go towards the start. Now yellow doesn't want to be early, so often yellow at this point will head up to try and get control and keep away from their lay line. Blue will follow them up, but this leaves enough of the gap that yellow can then duck down below again and try a second time. If the leading boat is able to head up quickly as the yellow boat heads up, then they may be able to luff the yellow boat, and that's going to put blue in the opposite of that situation we saw before. So now the leading boat has control of the boat behind and is able to hold them as long as they want till they choose to go and choose to do their start. So both boats are really looking to get underneath the other and luff them hard so that they can ultimately choose when they go. This means that both sailors need the ability to accelerate and decelerate rapidly and to bear away and head up very efficiently and quickly. They need to be able to communicate within the boat to execute these maneuvers well and be able to get rapid bear aways to try and get that hook, as it's known, on the opponent. They'll also have the worry all the time of reaching the lay line. Now, if the lay line is around here, then when they reach the lay line, one of the boats is going to have run out of space for the fishtailing and is going to choose eventually to head up. The boat behind then has a decision to make. Do they go above the boat and hope that this boat is below the lay line, in which case they're going to get a much better start? But if they're on the lay line or above the lay line, then this boat's going to get locked out at the boat end, or they're going to get squeezed up, or they're going to be in a bad place generally. Alternatively, if they think that this yellow boat is still above the lay line, once they've headed up, blue could still choose to go below and try and power through. If yellow's even a little bit too early or needs to slow down, then blue's going to get a really nice overlap here. They might accelerate through, they might be able to get a luff on and push yellow above the start boat or slow them down a lot, such that when they bear away, blue can get a much better start and accelerate over the line from that following position. So really the whole question when we're approaching the line is, how can I get a control of my opponent? How long until the start? How much time do I need to kill? And how close am I to my lay line? If you know how much time you need to kill and how close you are to your lay line, then that's going to give you all the vital information you need to know in order to make decisions to attack your opponent effectively. If you're really early, you're going to need to attack very aggressively and try really hard to get that luff, or you're going to need to look for an option to be able to cycle out and put another tack and jibe in. You're going to go through that whole ritual, that whole battle again of leading away from the line, or you're going to end up in a tight circle spinning round, and that's going to allow you to kill some more time before you then get back into this fishtailing situation. On the other hand, if you're late then both boats are going to be pushing hard to the line. One boat might try and split high early, giving them a shorter distance to the line. If the other boat luffs them, then they might still try and slip below. There might still be an option to lock them out at the start boat. So even if you're a little bit late or if you're rushing into the line, there are still options for attacking another boat. And to complicate all of this further, we've all got lots of teammates in the race too who could do all sorts of things. And the start is a really great place where we can be quite opportunistic and we can call plays with our teammates, which is going to let us do things like take out an opponent from their pair, swap pairs around. If we're too early and our teammate's too late, maybe I'm going to push further down the line than I normally would. We're going to swap positions, and you're going to need really good communication with your teammates, and you're also going to need lots of experience, lots of practice of being in the start, so then you can get that spatial awareness and that feel of when you can do things, when you can take out an opponent boat. You need to really practice getting your head out of the boat. And this means you also need really good communication within the boat, because if you're doing different things, if you're sailing with a crew, then one of you needs to, probably the helm, needs to always be looking at the other boats, always looking for these opportunities, always focused on fishtailing. And that means the crew needs to be feeding vital information, such as the time to the line, the time to burn, and how far they are away from the ley lines. And this is going to inform all the helm's decisions about how hard they're going to be pushing or attacking this other boat. And the more responsibility you can split, the easier it is for each person to focus on their roles and get it right. As you come into the line, there can be all sorts of carnage. Every race is slightly different, and there's way more tactics than any other part of the course. There's way more diversity of strategies that people use, and so there's too much to go over in one video. But I hope this has been helpful for giving you a basic understanding of what we're trying to achieve when we approach the line, of thinking about when we want to lead and follow, how we're going to gain control of an opponent boat through fishtailing, and the kind of things we need to be thinking about to ensure an effective start. If you guys enjoyed this, let me know and we can go over some specific starting strategies that I've used effectively, starting strategies that I know opponents have used, different team tactics, and we can look at some different ways to set up and organise your team to maximise your effectiveness. But beyond that, I would say the best thing to do is get out and practice, do lots of one-on-one exercises against another boat, so you can practice these boat handling and specific skills to gain control of a pair. And then practice lots of team exercises, doing practice starts where you just roll through start after start after start. And that's going to let you get that spatial awareness of how to operate in a big race, and avoid doing full races. Instead, focus on just doing lots of those exercises, just lots of the start again and again and again. So then you can feel what it's like in that tight starting area when you're maybe a bit early, when you're maybe a bit late, and you can gain that head out of the boat awareness. Thanks for watching again. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing, as it really helps the video. And I hope you've all really enjoyed and found something useful to take into your next training session or race.